Welcome, fifth graders. Today we will be comparing fractions and decimals. In order to be successful with this lesson, you will need a few things: pencil, paper, and a positive mindset. The SOL that we will be working on is 5.2b. The students will compare and order fractions, mixed numbers, and/or decimals in a given set from least to greatest and greatest to least. Let's get started. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to do just that: compare fractions and/or decimals using the symbols less than, greater than, equal to, or not equal to. Before I start comparing, I wanted to show you guys what the symbols look like, just to, jog your memory. The greater than symbol. It's a mathematical symbol that shows a number is larger in value than another. For example, 1,167 is greater than 1,066. The less than symbol is the opposite of the greater than symbol, and it's a number. It's a symbol that shows a number is smaller in value than another number. Our example would be 12,266 is less than 12,897. There it is. Our equal to symbol. It's a mathematical symbol that shows a number is equal in value to another number. 10,782 is equal to 10,782. And our last symbol is the not equal to symbol. We don't see this often, but we will see it. Mathematical symbols that shows that one value is not equal to another. And this is what it looks like. 7,898 is not equal to 7,899. Let's get started and practice with our symbols. We'll start with comparing fractions. We're comparing 3/4 and 4/5. In order to compare 3/4 and 4/5, we have to take the different denominators, the 4 and the 5, and write equivalent fractions with common denominators. We do this by looking for the least common multiple. So I'm going to take the denominator from 3/4 and the denominator from 4/5 to find my common multiples. And here it goes. I look at my 4, and I'm basically skip counting, finding the multiples of 4. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. I also know that 5 is a factor of 20. And so I highlighted this red because I knew 20 would be where I would stop. But let's continue on so we can see if we're right. 5, 10, 15, 20. Yes, we were right. So now that we have our common multiples, I count how many it took me to get there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I multiply my numerator and denominator by 5. Once I do that, I solve it and find my equivalent fraction, which is 15/20. I do the same thing for 4/5, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 times 4 equals 20. And so I multiply 4/5 by 4, the numerator and the denominator. And when I do that, I get 16/20. Now, by looking at my fractions, I now have common denominators, and so now I use the numerators to help me do the final step, which is comparing which numerator is bigger. Between 15 and 16, I know that 16/20 is bigger, and therefore 4/5 is the larger number. So I know that 3/4 is less than 4/5. Now we're going to do some practice. Compare the following fractions: 5/12 to 1/3, 2/6 to 3/4. We'll do these together. Later on in the lesson, you'll get some practice to do independently. 5/12 to 1/3. Here we go. I did the same thing as I did in the prior lesson. I found my least common multiple, which between the 3rd and the 12th, I always start with the smaller denominator. That way I can see if I can get to the other denominator in the fraction that I'm comparing it to. And in this case, I was able to get to 12 by finding the multiples of 3. 3, 6, 9, 12. it took me 4 times to get there. 3 times 4 is 12. And I did the same thing with my numerator. 1 times 4 is 4. And that's how I got 4 twelfths. So I'm comparing 5 twelfths to 4 twelfths. And I noticed that 5 twelfths is bigger. So my answer is going to show 5 twelfths is greater than 1/3. All right, let's go to the next one. You want to try it on your own? Give it a go. I'll pause the video for a second so you can try it. All right, 2/6 compared to 3/4. You were to try this one on your own, and you should have come up with the common denominator of 12 as well. When I found the common multiples of 6, 6 times 2 gives me 12, and 2 times 2 gives me 4. I also should have found that the least common multiple of 4 and 6 were 12 here, and 4 times 3 gives me 12, and 3 times 3 gives me 9. And so now I have 4 twelfths compared to 9 twelfths. Looking at my numerators, I know that 9 twelfths is bigger. And so I can say that 2/6 is less than 3/4. Now we're going to move on to comparing decimals. To compare decimals, you line up the decimal points and compare the digits from left to right until you find the place where the digits are different. We're going to compare the decimals and write whether they are less than, greater than, or equal to. So take a look at the first set of decimals that we have, 81 hundredths and 84 hundredths. The first thing I like to do is place them into my place value chart as such. I line up my decimals in the correct column, and then I look at each column to see if the numbers are the same or different. Once I do that, if I need to add zeros, I will. If not, I just compare them. So looking at the tens place, I have 2 numbers that are the same. So I need to go over to my right. And now looking at the hundredths place, I notice that there's a 1 and the 4. I also know that 4 is bigger than 1. So my answer should be 81 hundredths is less than 84 hundredths. Now you know what time it is. It's time to practice. Compare the following decimals: 14 hundredths to 41 thousandths, 760 thousandths to 76 hundredths. I'll give you a minute to try to figure out the answer on your own, and I'll be right back to help out. All right, let's see how you did. First things first, we place our numbers, our decimals inside of our place value chart. And for the first problem, I needed to add a 0 because there were 2 digits here and there are 3 digits here. So to make it all equal length, I added the 0. Same thing for the problem below. Add that 0. So now I can compare the numbers, and I'm looking at the tens place. I notice that 1 is bigger than 0, so I'm finished. I don't have to go any further. And the answer is 14 hundredths is greater than 41 thousandths. Same thing here. I look at each column, and I notice that all the numbers are the same in each column. So my answer is 760 thousandths is equal to 76 hundredths. There we go. We also don't want to forget about our mixed numbers. So remember, when you're dealing with mixed numbers, the whole number stays the same. The whole number stays the same. Take a look at 1 2/5. Well, when I convert 2/5 to a decimal, I get 4/10. And so I leave 1 as is, and I add my decimal and the decimal that I converted 2/5 to, which is 4/10. The same thing here with 1 1/5. 1 1/5 becomes 1 2/10. Now you know what I'm about to say. Let's practice. Compare the fractions and decimals below. I'll give you a few minutes to try on your own. So pause it, try your best, and I'll come back in a moment. All right, let's see what you've done. 1 1/3 compared to 35 hundredths. So first things first, I need to take my mixed number and change that fraction into a decimal. And when I do, I should get 1 33 hundredths after the division process. And then, of course, I place 35 hundredths under it and making sure that each number is aligned. And now I can look at each column to see what number is biggest. So let's start with the ones column. I noticed that 1 is bigger than 0, so I'm done. And my answer becomes 1 1/3 is greater than 35 hundredths. All right, the next problem. I don't see a mixed number, but I do see a fraction. 1/4. I know from prior knowledge and from the lessons before today's lesson that 1/4 is the same as 1/4. And so 1/4 represents 25 hundredths. And so I place 25 hundredths here, and I also place 256 thousandths under 25 hundredths. I add my 0, and then I do some comparing. I look at each column to see what number is bigger. The tenths column has two numbers that are the same. The hundredths column, two numbers that are the same. And the thousands column, I notice that the 6 is bigger than 0. So my answer will be 1/4 is less than 256 thousandths. How did you do? All right. Now it's time to practice. You guys will have 6 questions to work on, and I'll show you each question. You will use the symbols less than, greater than, and equal to answer number 1, 2, and 3. We go to the next page, and you will answer number 4 and 5. And you notice that not equal to symbol there that we talked about earlier? Good. And lastly, number 6. Once you finish number 6 and you have completed all of the questions, you can click on the link and it'll say practice set answer key. Check your answers when you're done. Good luck, boys and girls. I hope you learn lots. Have a great day.